welcome back to the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio. For those newly joining the program, my name is Irina Zuckerman, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider. With us today, we have a mystery guest. His name is Omar. He's a researcher, a Ukraine supporter, and a Twitter Space host, who is going to share with us insights on a very strange incident, or which is actually continuing to develop, which is an effort to fundraise in cryptocurrency, allegedly to assist Ukraine, and why and how this fundraising effort turned out to be a scam connected to Russia's cryptocurrency policy, not only within its own borders but in the region. Before we get into all of that, however, Omar, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this particular line of research.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit about me. So I currently reside in New York City. I'm not gonna get into too much of my background. I graduated med school overseas and currently doing other ventures. But I am active on the Twitter scene, specifically the Ukrainian one. And been following the war on Ukraine pretty closely. We hold almost weekly spaces, or sometimes daily spaces, sometimes 17 hours, talking about the topic. And we are a very, let's just say, close-knit community of people who are supporting Ukraine. And the reason why this came into my radar is, I mean, if you want to talk specifically about what happened with Ukraine now, or you want me to reserve that for later?
Start with more general information, how you got into this general area, and then we'll talk about Ukraine now.
Yeah, I mean, in general, Twitter, as you know, is quite important for political discussions. People there tend to be more politically active, have more influence, and it's also being used as a measure for public opinions on different topics. So it is very known to be it's very well known to be a very, very important tool in everybody's toolbox in terms of public opinion. So while I was there, I'm usually tweeting and sharing my opinions, and I came into we came across many people. One of them were the Ukraine DAO. The first time I actually noticed this particular entity was there is a very famous Twitter space called Maria Report. At that time, it was actually under a different name, but that is how I actually got into the space scene. First time I listened from her, she was, and by her I mean the leader of that particular group. Her name is Alana Shevchenko, and she was discussing that why is everyone accusing her of embezzlement, and that is people are anti-Ukraine, and that was literally the first thing I've ever heard of her. So, and that got me curious because I have never heard of you before, and the first thing I hear of you is people accusing you of things, and. But that didn't, I didn't really pay much attention because, as you know, there is a lot of, it's a very messy situation. It's war, right? So there will always be situations where people are misappropriating funds. That is to be expected. But what was strange was we noticed later that she started to attack Ukrainian, you name it, Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian supporters, foreign supporters, Russian opposition. And in particular, she seems to be very focused on attacking the Russian opposition while not mentioning people directly related to Putin or Putin himself almost at all. So, for example, if you go to her Twitter, at the moment, you will notice the last 10 tweets is about that this is not Putin's fault. It's Russians' fault, or some other narrative, and attacking the Russian opposition excessively, while not, as I mentioned, while not attacking anyone who is clearly pro-Russia or having any Russian connections. Then we started to look deeper because the behavior was very strange. And as you know, we uncovered a lot of very concerning connections from Edward Snowden to Free Ross Albright, the Silk Road founder, to Vitalik Buterin, who is a Russian national who had a joint venture with Putin, that is Russian Ethereum, to the agenda of the DAO itself, which seems to be very very focused on crypto and the uses of crypto and promoting crypto, and very little about Ukraine, sometimes to the detriment of Ukraine. So something like Tornado Cash, for example, who was already linked to the FSB, there's people who have been convicted and laundering money for North Korea. And so again, this is not a conspiracy. That's already that's already being prosecuted. But the point is that Tornado Cash was defended by her group and Vitalik. And for example, he claimed to have donated to Ukraine using Tornado Cash, and this is a reason why he claims it has valid reasons to be used. Although the fact that he's disclosing that he donated using it kind of negates the reason for that, because you are telling us. So there's no anonymity here. But the point is, she doubled down as well, claiming that somebody was stating that 99% of people who are using crypto cash are using it for illegal purposes, and her answer was define illegal. This tweet, I think, is still available, or if she didn't delete it. But it's quite strange to defend an entity that was already proven to have been linked to the FSB. And try to legitimize it, and you see that theme occurring over and over again with very shady characters that are either being their reputation being polished by her, or she's finding excuses to legitimize things that are tied directly to Russia while attacking people who are pro-Ukraine, and she's supposedly Ukrainian, she's supposedly a Ukrainian patriot. But if you look at her behavior, it raises so many questions, and I'm happy to go into detail of that.
Yes, exactly. So I want to, for those in the audience who have not closely followed this story or probably have never heard of any of this, let's start from the beginning in chronological order and start with the cast of characters. Who is Alona Shevchenko, and how did she get involved with this Ukraine DAO project?
Yeah, so Alona Shevchenko, she's a Ukrainian woman. She was born in eastern Ukraine to a Russian-speaking majority location or zip code, shall we say. So her native language is Russian, although she does speak Ukrainian, but not at the same proficiency. And she grew up and graduated, I believe, Dnipro University in language studies. Then she immigrated to the UK, I believe in 2014, 2015, right after the Crimean and Donbass invasion. And then she worked in the UK as a translator for Russian legal documents, so and as a paralegal, I believe. But after that, she quit her job and moved into crypto. So there was about 2 years where she was involved in crypto and with another or DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization. It's a crypto entity that is, it's supposed to be a way to have a vote while owning a share of the company and some very fanciful terms or so. But the problem with the organization that she was involved with, it's called Grow. It had about $7 million on venture capital funding. Silicon Valley, old, just same old, sources of venture capital that you expect. The problem was that the entity ended up having a valuation of about $100 million on its token. I believe it's $140 million, and then it crashed by 99.9%. So it's a typical crypto pump and dump scheme and unfortunately, crypto is not as regulated as other financial institutions and stocks. So even if you catch a pump and dump, you can very well get away with it. It's very common. But the fact that she was involved with it doesn't, and it's not illegal because crypto is not regulated, doesn't mean it's not wrong. So you have a history of someone who was involved in a pump and dump scheme, and then somehow she was connected to Vitalik Buterin. We have no idea how, because yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to clarify something, because it sounds that prior to her sudden emergence in that project, she had no prior crypto background. She was a paralegal, someone with a translation, maybe some legal background, but not someone in the financial circles, not someone in the blockchain with a blockchain educational background, not a crypto miner. What drew her to that, and how did she end up having enough background to operate in that particular project? Was it just the thrill of innovation, or?
So she took a 4-week online course on cryptocurrency and its political implications or something of that nature. That's a very good question, because according to some indications, it might have been her relationship with Nadia or the guys, the Russian opposition that she was very close to when she lived in Brighton in London. But how did she end up getting a job as a spokesperson? She didn't have a technical job. She was a spokesperson. She was somebody who just speaks for them, and at Twitter, managed their Twitter and Telegram channels and so forth. So she wasn't doing something technical, but at the same time, it is very curious how she got into that. What is more curious is her involvement with another DAO, which is called the Free Ross DAO, and it might have predated that the Grow involvement. The Free Ross DAO is to say it's problematic is an understatement, because the funding for it came from a bigger entity called the Pleaser DAO, and the Pleaser DAO was a entity that was pretty much set up to acquire an NFT that was sold by Edward Snowden, and I will get into detail from that, but let's, just to make it more, I know, because there's so many connections, but
yes, I just want to clarify a seeming contradiction here. So this Alona lives in the UK. She gets close to some people from the Russian opposition, and yet she is also affiliated with entities that have ties to Snowden, who is anything but Russian opposition by anyone's definition. How does that work?
Well, it's even worse, because later she does turn on the Russian opposition that she used to be affiliated with, and it's a common theme of using people for stepping stones or something more sinister. But the thing with Free Ross is,
and who is
first
Free
of all,
Ross, or why is it called that, Free Ross?
Yeah, it's Ross Albright, the founder of Silk Road, the dark web cryptocurrency fueled drug dealing website. That's basically 99% of what it's used for. It was smuggling drugs into the United States and distributing it, and it became such a big problem that now it's very hard to control. Also there was multiple offenses that was committed by him, including ordering the murder of some of his enemies, and luckily they didn't die, but he was indicted for other reasons, and he's serving 2 life sentences right now for multiple offenses. The problem with him is, the problem with the Free Ross DAO is the founders are they're all anti-establishment to a extreme degree. They all have a problem with the Federal Reserve, or this common theme of people who don't want regulation in terms of anything, really. You're in the industry, you're selling drugs, so you do not want to have your money tracked. It's not anything noble. in terms of, it wasn't just drugs. There was weapons. There was all kind of illegal criminal activity that was going on the website. And the fact that she's defending him, how she joined it out, it's all very valid questions. And also the pro-Russia stance of its founders. For example, Ray Youssef from Paxful. He is as pro-Russia as it gets. And, apparently, of course, there will be an overlap between people who are anti-establishment and people who don't like the United States in general and find Russia to be an ally. So why would she be involved in that? It's a very valid question.
So what's the relationship between this Free Rosedale and that Snowden outlet? How exactly are they connected?
Well, funny enough, how is it connected is Alona. So if you connect, so the Free Rosedale was founded by, as I mentioned, a few groups like Ray and others. The Pleaser DAO, who is connected to both Free Ross, Edward Snowden, and another organization called the Freedom of Press that I will mention, and Ukraine DAO. The Pleaser DAO financed all of those. It's very curious why would an entity that organized two anti-establishment DAOs end up establishing a Ukraine DAO? But then that question gets easier to answer when you analyze what exactly the Ukraine DAO is doing, because it turned out to be anything but pro-Ukraine. I mean, at this point, just today, she's attacking a foreign Legion fighter that is, in the Ukrainian commandos, and he's a very well-respected person that has nothing to do with her really, and a seasoned fighter. He used to fight for the YPG. That would be the second foreign fighter from the YPG that she attacks. Which is another curious thing. But
that is very interesting, because at one point YPG did enjoy some level of Russia's protection before they turned completely and became more affiliated with they, meaning Russia, became more affiliated with Turkey and started doing business with Turkey. So,
right. That's kind of, the connection is there. It's kind of weak, but and she's attacking Russian soldiers. She's attacking Ukrainian soldiers and foreign Legion as well. And many of them are seasoned fighters who used to fight in other conflicts, including fighting ISIS. So I'm just mentioning that these two
it's a strange
individuals.
pattern indeed.
Correct.
But before we get to all of that, let's continue tracking all this chronologically, just to make sure that people understand all these things. You mentioned Ray Youssef, and he's part of that coalition of Pleaser and Free Ross and so forth. Who is he exactly, and how does he come into this picture?
Okay, so he is the CEO and founder of Paxful, the cryptocurrency exchange platform. And the way he actually started his business had to do with payments for Backpage, where they were kicked off of Visa and MasterCard, and that he was selling coupons that would later be used by people who were using the website, whether the advertisers or the users. And he had a way to do so. And it wasn't many people who were. So that's basically how it was started. Other than that, he's a very interesting character in terms of other offenses. He was arrested in Florida, I believe in 2016, for pointing an AR-15 on his neighbors, along with two Estonians. One of them, I believe, might be of Russian heritage, and he was caught with 500 rounds of ammunition, an AR-15, a box of cocaine, and a box of hashish.
Sounds like a great combination overall.
Yeah, and just FYI, he takes down any articles that mentions that, and he sends requests. So expect him to send you an email about that. But But I
Good
mean,
luck with that. I don't censor my work.
okay, well, perfect. Yeah, me neither. And for that, I got banned on Twitter. But
So did I
uh,
permanently.
yeah, but I mean, it's in general, he visited Russia in 2018 at least. He has a 70 strong a branch of Paxful in Russia. He refused to pull out. He voiced support for Putin. He didn't blame him for the war once. He called NATO to be the aggressor. He has an agent, the agent responsible for security for his branch in Estonia is a Russian national who I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's a very questionable character in terms of his connections to Russian state agencies. But in general, he is a very pro-Russia, a very anti-establishment person that was involved in a lot of crypto shady deals.
So our friend Alona ends up in this pump and dump scheme, and at the same time, or perhaps even previously, she ends up in the same general circles as all these guys. So after her pump and dump scheme, what happens next? What does she do?
So she immediately, I mean, while she was on the Grow Capital or the pump and dump crypto scheme, she got her job at the Ukraine DAO, where she was.
And who's exactly? Just to be clear about the chain here.
Okay,
who organized it?
So Ray, the one we just mentioned, he visited Alona on the 20th of February 2022. Personally, and he was representing Free Ross, where she was already working at Free Ross at that time. Now, prior to that, 5 days before that, Alona sets up a wallet, and she receives, I mean, a small amount, relatively small amount, $1,300 from Free Ross DAO as a payment for her work as a spokesperson for them. But what's interesting though is that the origin of the transaction is actually a Pleaser DAO member. So the transaction is flagged as Pleaser DAO, although it's a payment for Free Ross. So that shows you how connected they are. And then that's the first transaction ever in her wallet that she's using it right now in her publicly. Now, fast forward 5 days later, she meets Ray, and then within a few hours, she publishes a letter, an open letter on the Free Ross website, calling for action, that she foresees a war happening, and she warns that this will lead to a bear market for crypto. So her concern was that this war will lead to a bear crypto market, and also she calls for she points out that she has no problems with Russians, and she likes the Russian literature, and she's a native Russian speaker, and a generally mild tone that is uncharacteristic of her, later, as we will mention. But so as I said, she received the payment of 15th. She then meets Ray, who is unequivocally pro-Putin, not just pro-Russia, pro-Putin. And then she sets up a DAO that is supposed to help Ukraine in its crisis, even before the war starts. So hours after this open letter, she starts, I believe, organizing on Telegram or Discord or whatnot, a collective, effort to set it up, and somehow she ends up with very famous and interesting people that I am not sure why she was chosen to be the one who represents them, because based on her credentials, there is no reason to do so.
What kind of people are we talking about?
So I mean, you have Nadia Tukumnatova, I believe. You have Vitalik Buterin. You have very heavy weights that you wouldn't expect to be involved in a initiative by a Russian language translator. She's Ukrainian, but I mean, at that point, there's no real reason because there was hundreds of other charities that were already established because the war has been going on since 2014. There was Come Back Alive. There was you could just simply donate to Come Back Alive without going through all this trouble, right? But this is the first DAO that Ukraine had. That is a fact, so the reasoning behind it was that the banks were down and there was no way to finance Ukraine within the first few hours or first few days of the invasion because of the invasion. That was the claim that they had, that this is the reason why this is important. Although we have very little evidence to show that banks were down at any point during the invasion.
So there's something that seems a little bit questionable to me. Part of my cynicism, Vitalik Buterin is not only a Russian national, but he's in government circles. And all of a sudden, he goes around on a publicity tour claiming that he's donating in support of Ukraine. How is he not immediately stopped, given the sheer number of people who've done far less, who've ended up in prison or worse in Putin's regime? And this is a very high-profile figure, not some random miner from somewhere.
Right. I mean, he resides in Canada, but I mean, he's a Russian national. He was born in Russia. His dad is Russian as well. The thing with Vitalik is
linked to those pro-government circles, though, publicly.
Correct. Yes, and as you know, the Russian government is not one entity. So the situation right now is that there is a lot of oligarchs, and I mean, calling him an oligarch is an understatement. He's a billionaire who is Russian. That's pretty much the definition. But I mean, other than that, he is linked directly to some ventures that they had. But there is an internal strife between oligarchs and Putin. They believe that he caused them, stress, and he is the reason why a lot of their money is being frozen, and they're falling off windows now. And there is a schism between. Not just in Russia, yeah. He could be one of them if he's not, it's not aligned. So. But why is he, the reason, I mean, I get your question is, why did he get away with all of that when others didn't?
Exactly. When he went about it so publicly, had he done so secretly, maybe, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But he made front pages with that step, and there was zero response from anybody, from the usual suspects, even, the usual Russian propagandists, even nothing. So
they do not mention him. You're right.
I find it very curious, given that they react to even the smallest things by anybody anywhere. And here is a high-profile personality causing supposedly a major disruption by helping with this DAO and by donating his money and taking this position.
So yeah, I mean, as far as his motives, it could be that he's just trying to do the right thing, but we can see a pattern of oligarchs trying to distance themselves from Putin to try to prevent their money from being frozen. And if you are and as well, on top of that, there is factions inside Russia, the Russian government itself, that is not happy with what is happening. So the agenda
here, I'm pardon my cynicism. Buterin is an experienced guy. He ends up with someone like Alona, who has a history with scams in the past. He'd see right through something like that, especially if he's trying to send a political message. Why would he ever associate with something with her? And if Ukraine DAO is a scam, how could somebody like that not see that, fairly quickly? What I'm getting at is how it's very difficult for me not to see him as part of the entire setup to begin with, who basically did not necessarily have a good agenda, who was in fact very much part of this setup, and it was probably was one of the masterminds behind it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his relationship with her is so strong to the point that he would come to a space that she holds with 15 people before he comes, and then becomes 600 when he. I mean, for people who are not familiar, I mean, to set up a Twitter space, you just click 2 buttons and you're live, and it's usually something very casual. For someone like Vitalik Buterin to come for a random person in their space while they were being accused of mismanagement and embezzlement, for him to put himself in such a position is very interesting, because those people usually know exactly who they are dealing with before they deal with, and he's not stupid. He's a very smart person. So for him to find it worth it to do so is very interesting. It wasn't in the beginning, the allegations and stuff about Alona was not public, right? But he would have known for sure, even if we didn't, right? So why is he supporting her as much as he is? I don't know. It could be that how did he even know her? We still have no clue. And it's like someone becoming a friend of Elon Musk overnight and never even been physically in the same location. So it's weird, and that's it raises a lot of questions, and that's one of hundreds of questions that are there. Some of them have been answered lately. Yeah, I mean, over the past 10 days.
So we'll get to that part in a moment, but let's get back to what you said earlier, which is Ukraine DAO was the first DAO for Ukraine. And the
Correct.
premise was, okay, oh, well, the banks are going to collapse, although there was no indication. I just want to bring up something coincidental that happened at about the same time, and which no one really talks about, which is Peter Thiel, right, one of his organizations, basically focused on crypto, dumped its Bitcoin right before the war for the same reason as what Alona said, in expectation of a bear market for crypto.
Oh, now it's more interesting because Peter Thiel is a financer of the Ukraine DAO.
No, are you
Yes,
serious?
yes, he is. He actually has I believe the company is called Crypt AZ16, and it financed the Pleaser DAO. So he is, in fact, he shows up in multiple other occasions.
Needless to say, Peter Thiel is as experienced as Buterin, if not more, and he has to know that Pleaser DAO is connected to Snowden.
Oh, he does. Yes, I mean, these people have people who research all day.
Peter Thiel is somebody who has donated heavily to a number of Republican candidates in the United States.
Yes, and I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and as well as his involvement with Palantir, the spying startup, which is supposedly now being used on the Ukrainian side. Although I'll be cautious, but I mean, he's as you know, he's part of the PayPal mafia, the early Elon and people who are prolific investors that have a great reputation as people who disrupt. But I mean, the fact that he dumped crypto and then financed a crypto DAO. I mean, this I believe I wasn't even aware that he was doing that, because the reason I came across his name is because he financed the Pleaser DAO. So. Which is what both Snowden's work. I mean, the interesting part is the 5.5 million that went to Snowden. It actually didn't go to Snowden's bank account. It went to an organization called Freedom of Press.
And what is that exactly?
Well, it's basically a organization that is. I mean, their mission statement is to protect whistleblowers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the only problem is it's only Western whistleblowers that are being almost almost exclusively the target. So they invest in a software that allows for secure communication between whistleblowers, which in other, some might call them spies, some might call them whistleblowers, whatever whatever terminology you choose. The point is that Edward Snowden is in Russia at the moment. Okay, whether he chose to walk into the embassy by choice or he just happened to be there and that what came to his mind is irrelevant, because right now he's in Russia and under Russian protection, and you could either think he's doing it from his own mind or he's a hostage, but he's doing what Russia wants. Otherwise, he'd be dead. So, I mean, you could, if you like him, if you think he's a great guy, you could forgive him for doing whatever he does because it's his life. So, right now, this organization is that he funds, and he actually is in the board. He and Laura, the guys who broke the story, is doing nothing but financing what Russia considers spies to their benefit. We call them whistleblowers for privacy. Russia calls them spies for Russia, that they don't pay directly. And this also very curious fact is the NFT that sold for $5.5 million in his behalf. 1 year later, Snowden sells another NFT and it sells for $25,000. So you have something that sold for 5.5 million, and something similar sold for 25,000. And you would wonder if it was really for the NFT or was it just financing the organization?
A lot of very strange things happening here, and there's a lot to unpack. But let's get back to the Ukraine DAO itself. How did you and others come to discover that the DAO itself is a scam, and what does that scam consist of exactly?
So I have, obviously, when you're on Twitter, you have friends, right? And 3 of my, pro-Ukraine friends were being attacked by Alona and her, a group of very questionable characters as well that are around her. But I mean, she was very obsessed with he's not exactly a journalist, but let's just call him a journalist that was working with the Kiev Post, and she was and he covers the Russian opposition. He has a relationship to them. It's not a secret. She was obsessed with him to a very interesting and level that out of all the people she attacked, she was very focused on him, and I was wondering why. So. I like to look up stuff, and I came across, certain very concerning behaviors, and I started to look at like the pattern of who she attacking, and it appeared that she attacks the Russian opposition, Ukrainian Western supporters, and anything but Russia. So it would be Germany, it would be people within Ukraine that are having a certain opinion or so. But it's never Russia. It's never a clear person this is actually a bad actor. She doesn't even try. In fact, she tries to avoid it when it comes up. And the theme is that her theme now, although before the war it was that it's only Putin's fault, literally on the 21st, her theme now is that all Russians are guilty and we should, I don't know how she plans to fix the problem, whether she wants to exterminate them, or I don't know how this, her proposition is that Russians are guilty all and there's just no way to fix it. And, we can go back and forth of them being complacent.
Contradiction. So she
Yes.
attacks critics of Russia, but at the same time, she claims that Russians are guilty. How does that make sense? To me, it's completely polar. What if she thinks that Russians are guilty? Why does she keep attacking all these people like the journalist and others?
I mean, it gets even more curious. So, for example, her VK account is under a Russian last name, which is Brodskaya. So she calls herself Alyona Brodskaya on it. And out of the 300 friends she has, about more than 180 are in Russia or Russian. Her all music is Russian. Her videos are Russian. her posts are Russian, and so there is no indication that she had this view at all, even after the invasion of the Donbass and Crimea. So the claim is that she did this 180 after the genocide, and I'm sure she became aware of the of the situation. But Putin didn't get elected yesterday. It's been a 20-year process, and we saw it long ago. And if she has a very myopic view of the world, and she cannot judge who is bad until the war starts, then we shouldn't trust her with her judgment at the moment. And also the fact that Vitalik Buterin himself does not share this view. In fact, he says that ordinary Russians shouldn't be punished, and she wouldn't call him out for that, although she would call others for the same offense. And he, in one tweet, for example, he said he supports people who are leaving Russia even if they have a Z sign on their car. And I mean, so someone with a Z sign who went out of their way to have a Z sign that is not mandatory, I mean, even a controversial somebody like that, and Vitalik is supporting them, and then at the same time she comes and tell people that all Russians are guilty. I mean, you can choose one of those, but you can't have both simultaneously based on what fits your narrative at the moment.
So we have this interesting situation where somebody who uses an alias and who says different things to different audiences, in essence, is entrusted as a representative of the first DAO that's supposed to support a country that she supports only in that particular respect, but attacks in all rhetoric and in all her social media interactions. Why did anyone ask her if she's so angry at Ukraine supporters? Why did she create that? What is the purpose of that DAO? Who is it supposed to help exactly if she hates everyone actually associated with Ukraine? And do her Russian friends know that she has a double life as Alona Shevchenko as opposed to Alona Brodskaya?
Yeah, correct. A double life is a very actually accurate representation because I mean, hypocrisy at an extreme level is just I mean, it's just mind-boggling. So, for example, one of her points was again the person she's obsessed with, Jason J. Smart from Kiev Post, and he's also a political advisor for I mean multiple campaigns, including late John McCain. But anyway, so she would her start of her attacks on him was that he held a space claiming that Putin might use nuclear weapons out of desperation. And she claimed that this is a Russian propaganda ploy or, a talking point, right? The only problem is after dozens of tweets of her talking about the specific subject, she goes into a podcast that is now on Apple, and she says she believes Putin will most likely use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. I mean, she uses the word most likely. So, and then 2 weeks later, she goes back to say that this is a Russian propaganda talking point. So she literally said the same exact thing with even more. I mean, Jason never said it's most likely. So she would do that and she would get away with it. I mean, it's a tactic that is used by Russian propaganda in general. It's a different message for a different audience. So you would see, for example, them pushing certain narratives here that would not sell in Russia, and then having the same, the opposite, something that's incompatible with what they said in the United States, through their embassy or their agents, and then sell it there, and nobody checks because people are, there's so much information around. Nobody will go and find that she in a podcast says the same exact thing that she's going against, and nobody called her out on it. She never apologized. She never said, "Oh, that was a mistake." She keeps, continuing with that in a very typical way that, you would see in any Russian disinformation campaign.
So Ukraine DAO, allegedly for the sake of saving Ukraine from the collapse of the banks, which in itself
Correct.
was a Russian propaganda talking point that never materialized, was set up. All these people donated money. What happened to the money? And by the way, I believe one of the donors was also FTX, and we don't know what happened with that either, right?
Okay, so there's a lot of to unpack here. So they raised $7 million through a party bid selling the Ukrainian flag NFT, and then the total money that was donated is 5.5 million. If you ask where is the remaining 1.6 million, because they raised 7.1 million, it's because the Ethereum devaluated a lot before they donated the money. The reason is she was delaying the donation. She was delaying the disbursement of the funds. There is evidence of that from her own chat. So $1 million was lost to mismanagement, at least. About $60,000 went to her directly, although it was advertised on their website and through Vitalik and through their Twitter that 100% of the money will go to Come Back Alive specifically. So she, at the moment, is embezzling money that was supposed to go to Come Back Alive, according to her, according to her group, and to Vitalik and to everyone. So the remaining, there is about $200,000 remaining right now in their wallet, and it's doing nothing but paying her every month about $5,000. And I mean, if you say that it's not a big amount, yeah, I mean, it's true that in the bigger scale of things, but it is interesting for someone who is getting paid for money that is supposed to be saving Ukrainian lives to be, again, trusted with anything they say, because you have to put your money where your mouth is. And her vote was to, rather than use all the money to save Ukrainian lives, she preferred to keep some of it herself for living a very comfortable life in the middle of London when she doesn't need to, because she doesn't have an actual job there. There is no reason why she's in London living in a very expensive place, and getting financing that through money that was supposed to go to Ukraine. If you love Ukraine, you sacrifice for it, you don't make money off of it. So it's just, there's so many inconsistencies. And as I mentioned, that's the crypto connection. A lot of people are not aware when they support her is that the whole thing was set up with crypto in mind, as that was her job. That was the people who financed it. That's their agenda, is to push a crypto agenda and to try to legitimize the way they make their money, because almost every single one of the founders have frozen money somewhere due to either prostitution or drug dealing or any a wide variety of illegal activities. So they had a good reason to try to find a good way to finance it. And if they feel that there is a damage to be done, if they are pro-Russia, by doing so, it's offset by the amount of damage Alona did to the Ukrainian information space. So if they even did it with their teeth, while pinching their skin, it's at the end of the day, they didn't help Ukraine much. In fact, what we see now is thousands of supporters who have either switched sides or just gave up on Ukraine, and you see about 16% of the U.S. population now is indifferent about it, more than in the beginning of the war. And if you ask those people why they don't care anymore, a lot of them are echo concerns that are that Alona is involved with. If you want me to go through that, I would as well.
Yes, please. Actually, I think it's worth bringing up because she seems to be both a symptom and a cause in this aspect.
Right. So I mean, I'll choose an even better example, and it's Germany. Germany is very important in terms of this war. I mean, second to the United States and Canada. Obviously, Germany is in Europe, so the German population have their history, right? So they are not. If you want to influence a population, this would be your easiest target, because they could go either way depending on how you act, right?
Mm-hmm.
she focuses a lot of her attention on criticizing the German aid to Ukraine and even German nationals. So she attacked a German national and called her a Nazi. She's a Ukrainian supporter because she is a third, she's even a third Ukrainian. Just because she's German, and she would push a narrative that all Germans are guilty, Germans are as bad as Putin, Germans are this, Germans are that. And if you have people who are in defense and they are like, should I support, should I not? And you see someone who's impossible to please, your reaction would be to be at least indifferent, if not just say, okay, I'll go for a side that appreciates me more and go to the dark side. So in Germany, this has been very, very prominent. And along with her association with some Alona is not far right. I mean, if you see her history and who she was associated with, she does not care about any of these far right causes. But lately, she has been associated herself with a lot of, I mean, not to exaggerate, actual Nazis. They are very few people who are actual Nazis. They're a very fringe group, but Alon associated with her himself with them, although ideologically there is nothing to show that she had these views before. And the reason that is a problem is for Germany specifically, they do not want to their funds to end up financing something that could end up with a nationalist movement in Ukraine. And I'm talking about, I believe they're called the, I mean, regardless, her association with far-right groups in Ukraine that is uncharacteristic of her character raises further questions of why would you do so, knowing that this particular issue is a problem for anyone donating to or financing the war effort in Ukraine. Nobody wants their money to go to Nazi far-right groups in Ukraine, and everybody's aware of that. And someone who loves Ukraine would call these people out and try to cut them off, all of the funding, right? So that when I spend my, tax dollars, I'm not worried about that. Why would she promote them rather than call them out? Although ideologically, I mean, she was married to a brown person, so you are definitely not with this group calling for the white race and all of this weird things that, I mean, I will not
happens to be Kanye West, but
right. I mean, yeah, you don't, it's just weird that you are very liberal in your views, extremely liberal. If you analyze her Twitter on a political analyzer, it's like far left to an extreme. But then you're associating yourself with extreme far right groups that are hurting Ukraine's image and are the reason why Russia is pushing its propaganda 24/7, focusing on those instead of calling them out. If I care about my country, I'll be like, these are bad actors that do not represent us, rather than doubling down on them. And it's a sensitive topic because, as you understand, Ukraine now is under genocide, and extremism is to be expected because you're literally getting killed. She understands that, and she's playing on that chord as a stepping stone, and for other agendas that I don't know. I have yet to see a positive outcome out of the way Alona attacks Ukrainian supporters and countries that are generally supporting Ukraine. Maybe not as much as they should, but the way she's approaching it is definitely not helping. If anything, it's and I mean, Alona is just a small part of the whole picture because obviously she's not that important, but it's a good example to show how this is being done. And there is so many players, as I said, there is people within Russia, there is people outside of Russia, there is Russian nationals that are not, are pro-establishment, pro-Russian establishment, just want Putin to go, even if they agree with everything else. Her obsession with Navalny is very strange. And if you talk about Navalny, most Ukrainians hate him. And she knows that. She capitalizes on that. Although before the war, there was no reason to think she thought he was a bad person. If anything, you would think she actually admired him, given that she was in groups with the Russian opposition that she was very much an active part of. So, I mean, there's just no coherent. There's no coherent ideology that you could just grab on, except that she's using everyone, and she has some agenda that is not Ukraine.
Well, that seems to be very clear, but it also seems to be more than just self-serving opportunism. I mean, there's certainly a dose of that for sure, but the way she approaches these audiences seems to have a purpose beyond simple accumulation of money, which, as you yourself pointed out, is sufficient but not ultimately all that great. So,
exactly. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
So the question is, if she is deliberately cultivating these connections to these neo-Nazis and whoever else, and how does she justify that? Doesn't anyone ask her questions about that? About her contradictory behavior and her affiliation with unhelpful,
Yes, people
videos?
did ask. She responded with, two responses. One of them is ignoring it. The other is saying that at the moment we shouldn't be criticized because we are at war. And I'll quote her saying, at the time of the Holocaust, no one was talking about Jewish extremism. I will give her the benefit of the doubt that she is not aware of what exactly she's referencing, because if she is, that is a far-right talking point. I think she's not aware. But that being said, it's a very problematic thing to say. She also said that she doesn't think that Olga, which is Olena Semenyanka, which is, if anyone is to be called a Nazi, she would be one.
Before we get to her, I just wanted to clarify something else, because the Ukrainian government itself has distanced itself very significantly from all these characters, and for years, even before the current, the newest administration, they've taken the time to disassociate themselves from those elements and political parties and elements inside the military, and reintegrate and restructure everything precisely to avoid it. So it's not only that she's actually contradicting the official government position on this matter. She's not merely saying offensive things, but she is literally taking a contradictory position to what Ukraine's official line on this is. So the question is, how does she justify that part of it?
Correct. So, I mean, the aid to Ukraine before the invasion, the full-scale invasion, was conditional on that, exactly what you were saying, that those groups be dealt with for the funding to happen, because it's something that no Westerner is comfortable with. I mean, it's a very well-established fact that before any funding goes to Ukraine, we make sure 100% that it's not going to these groups. So the trying to tie the Ukrainian government with such entity, and trying, for example, her profile picture or background is her picture of the Minister of Digital Transformation, and I believe at the moment he's a vice prime minister. So he's a very he's a public official, and then trying to, and at the same time having a friend that is one of the worst actors, not just a random far-right national, one of the worst actors, and trying to have a connection with him while at the same time implying that you're connected to the Ukrainian government. I do not think that this is helpful at all. In fact, I believe it almost looks like she's framing the Ukrainian government into showing that she has these connections that ideologically, again, she doesn't seem to subscribe to. So it's as if you're trying to frame them for the heck of it. Or for something else. But yeah, it's and again, the movement, the reason why Germany specifically doesn't like this movement is it's called a pan-Slavic. I'm sorry if you actually want to talk about it later, but I mean, go ahead.
No, that's fine, actually. Yeah,
Right.
that's a good time to discuss that.
Right. So here is the. I'll make it simple. Here is why Germany has been and other countries has been pedaling back and forth and doing all these delays. There is a significant group in Ukraine that is championing a project that is called the Planned Slavic Nation, which is, I mean, you can just substitute that with the Pan-Germanic nation if you just want to compare it. And it's basically an armed sector that would be in Eastern Europe that would champion the Slavic, Slavic white supremacy militant movement. Okay. Now, Olena Semeniaka is a leader in that group. This group is formed by actually Russian nationals as well. So a huge percentage of them is Russian far-right fringe nationals who believe in that project. So the project would involve Russia as well. And it's
very convenient to be an anti-nationalist group, which doesn't seem to believe in national borders and national destiny, as opposed to, borderless.
Yes.
Isn't that exactly what Russia actually uses as a justification? Is one of the many justifications for the war.
Exactly. The point is so even if Ukraine had a problem, that doesn't mean it's Russia's business, right? Mm-hmm. But Russian misinformation works. I mean, in a some convoluted way, they try to. Nobody asks, okay, even if Ukraine has these problems, why is that Russia's problem? Nobody gets into this. Nobody asks this question. But let's just say that Russia wants a justification to invade Ukraine. They will make something up, or they will encourage something. So the group that she is involved with, Olena, was actually tied to some funding from the Russian state entities, specifically a guy who's now who was banned from Germany, but he was very active. A Russian national as well. He was very active in the German far-right movement. So she would travel all over Europe with this, not with a Ukraine agenda. It's with this pan-Slavic agenda. So her ideology, Olena, is actually not national. It's cross-border of all of Eastern Europe. Including and her project is like, it's not going to be Russia, it's not going to be America, it's going to be our pan-Slavic superior nation. And Germany is very uncomfortable with that, and Russia knows that, and everybody knows that. And if you're propping this entity up, Germany will have questions. So Alona is insignificant, of course, but and she is but one of those actors. So, for example, Russia might have 100 journalists that echoing their point of views. Each individual journalist is not that important, but if you calculate, add all of them up, it is significant. And I mean, we can see we can see the results. That being said, we were lucky that we have the administration that we have right now, President Biden and President Zelensky. Had that not been the case, I mean, had it been a Trump administration, it would be a different story. And that being said as well, the funding for American nationalists, right? So you would think that Russia would, that is supposed to be anti-America, right, would not fund a American nationalist, but that's not the case. They specifically funded American nationalists who or chanting USA, USA. So why wouldn't Russia do the same exact thing in Ukraine, funding the groups that are that justify, or in their mind even try to justify their actions? So has there been links between these groups in Ukraine that Russia is using as a pretext for war? I mean, I can tell you that if you expel your Nazis to Ukraine, you'll be like, hey, if you're a Russian Nazi, please go here, and then invade it later, when you are the one who sent them.
Mhm.
So you have to question these entities, and I mean, I appeal to Ukrainian officials that we understand you are at war and this is genocide, but you are being used by a Russian agenda, and they are masquerading as Ukrainian nationals, although all what they care about is a superior, white Slavic race that has nothing to do with Ukrainian interests. It's something else that we are not subscribing for, and neither is Ukrainian government. But I mean, honestly, it's complicated, and it seems like they are getting away with it so far.
I wonder if there is going to be any traces of cryptocurrency linked to any of these characters found in the bank accounts or wallets. I would say crypto wallets of these pan-Slavic activists.
Yes, I mean, as far as crypto itself, it is so hard now to, even if you could trace it, sometimes I mean, as we mentioned, the example of the NFT of Edward Snowden, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are buying an NFT. It's the same way art was used for money laundering, right? You
Sure.
are buying an NFT for a freedom of press organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, under it, you're financing Edward Snowden and spies. But I mean, legally, there's nothing wrong with buying an NFT. You're literally, let's say that I want to pay a spy. Okay, I'm not, talking about this in particular. Let's say I want to pay a spy, but I don't want to make it look like I am. I would tell them, okay, just have this paper, draw an elephant on it, and I will buy it for $5 million. And I mean, that's literally what happened. So it's with crypto being added as a layer of complexity to how you could hide your tracks.
Mm-hmm.
It is becoming very hard to prove anything, and even if you did, sometimes it's perfectly legal. You could, for example, give them an award. You could buy them, travel tickets, give them exclusive interviews, promote their content online, using the Twitter algorithm, for example. There was a study that showed that Russia knows if they tweeted certain tweets with a certain sequence at a certain time, it will lead to those tweets actually getting promoted. There's a study, I'll forward it to you.
Yes, please. I would be very curious to see that. That's
yeah, so they studied 75 official Russian accounts, and so when they tweet, and it turned out that it was organized, and they see when there is less activity from others that will allow their tweet to actually be featured and all of that. So, for example, they could tweet a journalist that is not affiliated with them. They would just retweet him or her and promote whatever their narrative is. And then this author or whoever will get more traffic, going to them. And basically, there is nothing illegal about this. You can claim that there's nothing wrong with it, except that they're just pushing the Russian narrative, and they're exploiting a bug or an opportunity, to be more precise, in Twitter. And actually, there's almost no way to fix this.
I find it very curious because Snowden's cryptocurrency projects have been linked to separatists in various countries, including Spain. But in Ukraine, the separatist groups linked to Russia in Donbass, for instance, there's been alarmingly little information about any specific financing, especially crypto financing from Russia, which I find very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the separation in Ukraine, this is Russia, so I don't think there's need to do any of that. It's just plain. They can literally just walk through the border and deliver a truck with cash on it. Nothing will happen. You only use crypto when you need to. So again, the funding for these groups and the way they appeared. So, for example, Olena has a video that she's saying the invasion in 2014 was such a great opportunity. She doesn't call it a tragedy. She doesn't call it anything bad. She calls it an opportunity for us to be armed that would otherwise not be possible. So because there is an invasion now, we could be an armed group, and we could get away with many things that we couldn't otherwise hold. And for example, I will. This is exclusive. We have not released that yet. Olena had remember the Russian incursion in the Russian partisans who entered Russia, I think in Bryansk, and caused a false flag there. That was about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So this group had a party in 2018, and guess who was posting their party? It was Olena. Olena Semeniaka was featuring this group. It's a Russian Nazi group. And they had they call it militant rock party or something of that sort. Russian Nazis. I'm talking about Russian Nazis in particular. They tend to be very violent and very extreme in their views. I mean, given the Russian culture on top of being a Nazi, so. For her to be associated with this group, and then this group causing a false flag that happened 2 weeks ago, that for me is a huge red flag alone. I mean, just not mentioning any of the other stuff. Why would you feature a group that is a group of Russian Nazis? And then the way Russia deals with them is just to send them to Ukraine on purpose, because they know they can justify anything later, even if it doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter. So why would Elona associate with herself with someone like that? I don't know.
But that brings us to another point, which is you just said that there is no need to use crypto unless you have to when you are trying to hide something. But Ukraine DAO is almost a very, very in-your-face way of using crypto, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And some of it was scammed out and whatever. But why would you use crypto when you don't have to? What was the purpose of Ukraine DAO? Okay, they scammed some of it out for, what was the real reason for all these people? I mean, one of the funders was FTX, which was consequently, caught in a major fraud of its own elsewhere. But seems to have operated along very much the similar lines as this Elona person in the way they, just on a much bigger scale. So were they just trying to curry favors with the pro-Ukraine political groups here, the FTX, and what was in it for them and what was in it for anybody really? What was the purpose of the DAO?
Right. I mean, the FTX connection is very interesting because the reason why we knew is they started dumping their tokens recently, right? Mm-hmm. And one of those they dumped was 100,000 of the Love token, which is the Ukraine DAO token. For reference, I believe, so the whole circulation is about 3 million. So 100,000 is actually a significant amount. And that was just one transaction. And they were sending it back and forth between them, faking liquidity and some very strange behavior. But the reason why FTX would be involved, it just sets up another very valid question. What's in it for them? I mean, the goal of the DAO is public, and they say that they are trying to promote crypto and harness the power of Web3 and some fancy words. And in essence, it just says it's a crypto ad. That is what is about. What's in it for them? I mean, what's in it for them is one of the people who financed the DAO, Leonid Rodinsky, with, I believe, $2 million, is that he has $1 billion frozen at the moment from banks, and he would rather use crypto that cannot be frozen instead. So part of his PR campaign is this, and a lot of people, a lot of DAOs or a lot of organizations would not accept money from him, and he's aware of that. So all the bad actors who cannot possibly donate directly to reputable organizations or to Ukrainian army used the Ukrainian DAO as a vessel to do so that they can later claim that we're helping Ukraine, or crypto is a good thing, or why you're freezing our money when we can use it for a good reason. But you can tell that it's just no coincidence that you have all of these bad actors agreeing on choosing the same vessel when it was very wasteful. If you claim that crypto saves on transaction fees, I haven't even calculated how much they paid in gas fees for Ethereum, but you lose $1 million just in devaluation. That's worse than any transaction fee you'll ever pay for any bank. So there was just no reason for it to exist except that it had to. Otherwise, it wasn't possible for them to do what they wanted to do.
I'm getting at something else here in addition to what you said, which is a very interesting point, which is clearly this was a coordinated effort, as you just pointed out. Clearly, FTX, that's, that has literally made billions disappear, threw a little bit into this Ukraine DAO just as it lobbied a lot of different political causes and crypto groups just to make itself, just to endear itself and be able to steal more money. But what's interesting is that all of this happened within this past year when FTX was at the peak of its activity before everything crashed down. And I'm just wondering, I mean, yes, it was a convenient vehicle for them to basically try to appeal to even more people that way. But is it really just a coincidence that they happen to know all those specific pro-Russian and other pro-Russian people?
I don't believe. Yeah, go ahead.
Could there be also in political coordination on larger issues besides just using a convenient scam for personal self-aggrandizing?
Right. I mean, if you want to be safe, it is a crypto anarchist organization that has common interests with Russia, that has set up this DAO to infiltrate the Ukrainian scene and try to limit the damage that is caused when Ukraine wins this war, because Ukraine will win and it's already winning. But it was let's say a crisis remedy for them to try to save what they could, because this war is really bad for them. At least it turned out to be. And they had a plan. Obviously, it's not working. But they created this DAO to try to legitimize their existence and to try to push their crypto anarchist long game, which is it's a multi-decade project that they have. It's, as you said, there's just so many questions, and we can see the connections, we can make connections, we can infer some, we can know, for example, that Alona, took that amount of the DAO when she was not supposed to, which is a violation of trust and also a crime. But it's very easy for you to hide your tracks given all of this complexity. And what better to push your agenda than someone who's pretending to be very pro-Ukraine and going through a checklist of what could hurt Ukraine and doing it.
So it's been a year. I think it became fairly quickly obvious that the banks were not going to collapse. And, other more legitimate people came forward with donations. Why is Ukraine there still active after all of this, became fairly known? And what is Alona up to now?
So they switched their goal from a charity or fundraiser to a disinformation, an entity that is exposing Russian disinformation. That's what they call themselves. Only problem with that is that they are. So Alona right now is getting paid to basically be active on Twitter, and all what she's doing is exactly what you would expect a infiltrator or a Trojan horse would do. So a lot of people are giving her the benefit of the doubt that she's just doing it because of her character. But it is not random that you have Vitalik Buterin and Edward Snowden connected to your DAO. It's just not random. And Olena Semeniaka. It's just not random. She has an agenda, and it's clear, right? For someone who's not looking closely, it looks like she has their agenda herself. But for someone who, for example, checks her recent tweets about Putin and see that she is trying to say it's not his fault, or at some instances being sympathetic. For example, she's saying if she was him, she would throw Navalny in prison for 15 years instead of 10. She would go as far as what wouldn't be a clear opinion that she is actually doing Russia's bidding. She's someone in the Ukrainian space, in the Ukrainian house, right? So she understands that she cannot get away with just being blatantly pro Russia or pushing Russian narrative. So she would do anything else that would cause a problem in size. Think of a bull in China house, that's basically what she's doing. She's attacking everyone who's pro-Ukraine. Out of the 15 space hosts, me being one of, let's say I'm the 16th, she attacked all 16 of us. She attacked all the Russian opposition. She attacked all the foreign fighters. She attacked Ukrainian soldiers. She attacked hundreds of charities and Ukrainian supporters in Europe and in the United States. And she did very little attacking anything that is clearly pro-Russia or in Russian interests. So I do not understand how is that helpful.
All I can surmise is at some point while hanging out in England, which is completely infiltrated with Russian intelligence, she was recruited by somebody, received some sort of a training or encouragement or some sort of a backing, and was introduced to these high-level people who would normally never spend any time on somebody like that.
Okay, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but her job in, as you know, Russia, London is an oligarch city,
Sure.
at least before the start of the war. Now the UK is doing great things, but that doesn't deny that London is a cesspool of oligarchs. And her job when she was doing the legal work or the translation for Russian documents was basically involved in oligarch white collar crimes. So I mean, oligarchs, yeah, they do kill and, occasionally and stuff like that, but most of their crimes are white collar and
Sure.
or financial crimes, and that's what she was involved
Mm.
with. I do not know if that is related, but it's something I would look into if I see this behavior. And then, uh, her her how was she financing herself when she had no job for 6 months is another, another question. How did she meet Vitalik, or how did she know Vitalik? According to her, he called her out of the blue. um, and how did she get into the free Ross when she had no indication before that of anything crypto? And why did she choose a Silk Road, founder? Why? I mean, you don't join organizations, activist organizations, right? Without adopting the ideology, right? So you wouldn't be the CEO of, a animal rescue or vegetarian organization without being vegetarian, right? Yeah, I mean, at least you're not supposed to. So for her to be chosen for this particular organization's free Ross is very, very concerning. It's, and then this organization that is clearly pro-Russia setting up a Ukrainian DAO that does nothing except spread division between Ukrainian supporters on Twitter, which is a small thing if you think about it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just one of the factors that is leading for the bigger, the bigger picture. I just have one question. What is the benefit that Alona is bringing to the Ukrainian scene now, except controversy and division and people and just taking donation money? So I failed to find one reason to justify her actions or to justify her position right now, and any connection with the Ukrainian government. United 24 came out and said that they have nothing to do with her. It's the President Zelensky's initiative, which is a great thing. Oh, but there is another initiative called CATS, which is involved with United 24, and she is involved in it, and she was not removed yet. So it appears that Ukraine is concerned. It's just that they are they have not got, they have not taken all the measures necessary, but they appear to be doing so. And I mean, so far there's positive developments happening, and we will see what happens soon.
I mean, it clearly to me that she's a disinformation agent, if nothing else, if not something worse, actually, and increasingly more an operative than just a disinformation agent, a liaison between different assets of Russian policy, even if some of them have conflicting or divergent goals, they still at the end of the day are with Russia.
Right, it's correct, and her obsession about the Russian opposition is very curious. She knows she will get away with it because, obviously, most of us and most of Ukraine do not particularly like the Russian opposition because they haven't been critical enough, or they hadn't done enough to stop the war. But in the list of things being productive, would it be more productive to encourage the Russian opposition to overthrow Putin than to discourage any opposition in Russia?
Sure.
I mean, obviously, there is no other way to fix Russia except from inside. I mean, there's just no other way unless you're delusional. Unless she doesn't know that and she's not smart enough to get it, it's a different story. But who benefits from someone bashing Germany, the Russian opposition, American supporters, Western supporters, Ukrainian soldiers, except Russia? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, that certainly has raised a lot of questions, and there's still a lot more to learn. But this project, the way it created this base, very convenient base for all these people who are involved in certain things that are even worse elsewhere, that is something that deserves scrutiny, deserves to be revealed, if only as an illustration of the methods of disinformation all coming together in one place through a variety of different methods. I think this could be, a movie. If you wanted to make an educational video about disinformation, this story would be right, right, right there.
And how about having our own? I mean, I had an idea. I was joking with someone. I was like, we have to get a very pro-Russia person and do exactly what Alona is doing and see Russia collapse in a year.
Well, yes,
If
I was just talking about with some friends about disinformation methods and how sometimes they actually mirror each other, because pro-Russian groups often mirror what Ukraine is already doing in the efforts to distract and discredit and disinform. So it should go the other way as well.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, I totally agree. It's the way Russia does a lot of things very badly and very poorly and very inefficiently, except one thing, and it's disinformation and espionage and counterintelligence. And in that, they are very good, if not excellent. If you influence the United States elections, the world's strongest democracy, and get away with it until the election is over, by financing and promoting American nationalists, then you have a claim to say that you're good at what you do. So credit where credit is due. They're doing a great job. So our job is to try to put a light on that. And it's a very complicated problem because, as I said, there is a lot of ways you can do it and not get caught. And even if you get caught, it would be perfectly legal. That not to say that she didn't break the law. She breaks so many laws because she was very, very incompetent, and I believe she was a bad choice if they chose her. But in general, as a summary, we have a Ukrainian national that is causing division within the Ukrainian supporting community, that is embezzling money from Ukrainian charities like Come Back Alive, that is involved in suspending Ukrainian accounts on Twitter by mass reporting them, with a cult that she operates, that is involved with neo-Nazi groups that are fringe in Ukraine, that is being used as a pretext for Russian invasion, that is involved with individuals like Edward Snowden, who is controlled by Russian intelligence agencies, that is involved with people like Leonid Radzinsky, who is who has $1 billion of his money flagged due to his source of due to his involvement in the websites he runs, and all of that. All of these are connected to one person, and it's and one entity, and it's Ukraine DAO. That is, in my opinion, a Trojan horse in the Ukrainian house.
Not only that, but there's another issue here, and I think that is something for another conversation, but how all of that has divided and caused and discredited the crypto community.
Correct. I mean, as far as dividing, so for example, they might take a few snippets of this video and say, I'm defending Navalny, or I'm defending Russian position, I'm defending this, I'm defending that. And they would take, controversial points that they know will lead to division and try to amplify them instead of trying to focus on the main issue, which is Russian disinformation. So someone who is looking for controversial and questionable characters like Olena Semeniaka, that she knows very well. Some people will support, some people will against, and it will just poison the water and people will fight over her. And she does that on purpose, because the whole point is internal division. And whether she's doing that for clicks or because she's doing Russia's bidding on Ukraine's dime, I believe we will find out soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for shedding the light on this extremely complex story that we were hopefully able to clarify for our audience and for people who may never have heard of but should, because I think all these characters are separately and apart playing significant roles, and together they are having a very destructive and disruptive effect, and not in any positive way. They're good disruptors, but this gathering is not one of them.
Absolutely. As a final remark, so Russia is losing the war, and their only chance of getting something that would be worth the trouble they got themselves into is to reduce Western support that is a lifeline for Ukraine. Their bravery needs bullets. The bullets cost money. The bullets come from somewhere, and it's from the West End, from the United States and Canada. And the Canadian Army is very involved as well, because there's a huge Canadian diaspora in Ukraine and in Canada. But the only chance they have is to reduce the support. The only way to reduce the support is to divide it. The only way to divide it is to go with controversial people like Olena and promote them. And to create division between the supporters of Ukraine. To show this ultra, if you're not Ukrainian, you shouldn't support us. That's a new theme that she has, that she wants to test people with their DNA to see if they're Ukrainian or not, to see if they can support Ukraine, and all of this extremist views. The only way Russia could win, or could not, I mean, they're obviously lost already, but could get something worth it, is to reduce Western support. So this is extremely important. And the war that is being fought outside of the battlefield is what's going to decide this war. So with that, I mean, I just wanted to mention that I wish to remain anonymous, but I was doxxed by her group, by a person that is under investigation now by the Australian authorities for harassing, bullying and stalking. And doxing multiple people, including an attempt to dox a Ukrainian frontline soldier and another Ukrainian foreign legion fighter. So that's the reason why I'm appearing with my face, because I've been doxed already. So that just shows you, one of the things they did. Some people had some real life consequences with their life being endangered by their doxing of the cult that they have, including her cult includes, two individuals that are, one of them grew up in a neo-Nazi setting called Daniel Asher. He's an American far right. I mean, he calls himself ex-far right at the moment, but the other is called Max, and he's associated with also the far right in Ukraine, and has some very fascist views and believes that NATO is to blame and some weird things. I mean, we can go on, and I appreciate this, and there is some new things that are coming to light, and there is another topic that we can discuss other than the Ukrainian DAO that could be harmful at some point, that we're working on at the moment, and hopefully some results will come out of it.
I would be very, very happy to do so. I think that would be great. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for your courage and your commitment. I hope everyone watches the entire video and not just the snippets that the professional propagandists are likely to take out. Always watch the whole thing. Don't let people deliberately creating controversy hijack what you think and what you see. And this was the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio. With you was Irina Zuckerman, the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider, and Omar, the researcher who has shed light on the Ukraine DAO scam and its bizarre connections to a wide array of pro-Russian and Russian-linked anarchist crypto supporters and intelligence operatives.
Thank you so much, and Slava Ukraine.
Thank you so